So this is lesson 4 of Daniel. We're looking at chapter 2 this week. And just to review, Daniel is basically about kings and kingdoms. And the main theme really is God is in control of everything. And remember what's the story with Daniel in chapter 1? Where is he? What happened to him?
He was taken to Babylon.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. So he and some of the other young, healthy men were taken to Babylon in the first siege. And we talked about last week about the siege and why did Israel end up in Babylon?
Because of their disobedience to
Yes,
God.
right. So God told them how they were supposed to live, and they were disobedient, not once, not twice. I don't know how many times, but for years, right? And so he took them captive into Babylon, and we know how long they're going to be there, right? Anybody remember how long will they be there?
70 years.
Yeah, 70 years. All right. So we're just getting back in context here. And God gave Daniel favor in the sight of his captors in chapter 1 when he asks not to eat the king's food, but to only eat vegetables. Thank you, Andrea. And why was that he did not want to eat the king's food? Remember?
He didn't want to defile himself.
And why would eating the king's food cause him to be defiled?
Because it went against the law.
Yes,
Right.
thank you, Becca. We did some cross-referencing last week about why Daniel might have said, please, allow me not to eat the king's food, because the law, which was in Leviticus, said you cannot eat this, you cannot eat this, you cannot eat this.
Mm-hmm.
And how would Daniel know if what he was being served was on that list of things that he could not eat? So he respectfully asked not to eat the king's food. And he gained favor, and he was more intelligent than most of the other young men in Babylon there. So that brings us to chapter 2. Let's look at what is the setting here. Where are we in chapter 2? What's the first verse say?
Well, it says it was in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay. So we're still with Nebuchadnezzar. It was Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 1 that was reigning when they were taken over by Babylon. So this is in the second year. Remember, Daniel is in training for 3 years. So this is the second year of his training. All right. Now, the king Nebuchadnezzar, who is the king of Babylon, he had a dream. The dream caused him to not be able to sleep. So let's talk about in verses 1 through 13. In 1 through 13, what was his reaction to that dream?
Well, he wanted somebody to interpret it for him. He was so disturbed by it, but he wanted his magicians and enchanters and those people, sorcerers, to not only interpret the dream, but tell him what the dream was. And they obviously replied, nobody could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What would your reply have been?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, really?
Really?
Nobody can do that. Yeah, the summary of their discussion really is in verse 11. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods, small g, whose dwelling is not with flesh. So they were like, that's impossible to do. So what was his response to that?
It
But
says
he
it-
was so angry that he just commanded that all of the wise men of Babylon be destroyed.
Mhm.
So would that include Daniel and his friends?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mhm.
So he's like, off with your heads, everybody. Okay, so let's look at. So Daniel's life is in danger, right? His life is in danger because the king is asking this impossible. He has an impossible request. So in 14 to 16, let's just take a minute and look at how does Daniel respond to this?
Well, he went to Arioch and said,
Mhm.
why is it so urgent?
Mhm.
And Arioch explained to him,
Mhm.
and then he begged or requested that Arioch speak to the king and give him permission to allow him to speak to him. And in the meantime, he grabs his 3 friends and they go to the Lord in prayer.
Right, so that's the question is, you see, what did Daniel do once he bought some time? What did he do? Where did he
He went
go?
in prayer.
Yeah, yeah. He goes right to his friends and says, here's the problem. And we need to pray. We need to pray about this.
And also when he went first to the chief or the captain, Arioch, he was very kind of tactful. He was very respectful in his request. He wasn't upset, demanding, whatever, but being very respectful to those who are in authority over him, they were respectful of him then.
Mhm. Did we see that attitude of Daniel's in chapter 1 at all?
Yes.
Mhm. And what was the situation there?
Requesting that for 10 days they allow him to eat, he and his guys, to eat just vegetables and water, and to prove that he would be just as fit as those others, or better. But he
Yeah.
was very respectful again.
Respectful. That's the thing. In chapter 2, it says prudence and discretion. Prudence and discretion. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about how does that impact us? How does that impact us? What can we learn from Daniel?
When we face differences of opinions with people we meet and or work with, that we remember that we always be respectful and not speak out harshly or angrily, and trying to be humble.
Dan and I have had some conversation about reacting to a situation and responding to a situation. And I think this portion of scripture has definitely shown that that Daniel is responding by getting the facts, approaching the situation, asking for time, going to prayer, and all the other wise men, if you will, are all saying, how are we supposed to know, and not asking the respectful questions of give us some time to try to figure this out. They're all reacting. The king is reacting. Daniel's responding.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I hesitate to say anything about our country these days.
I was
my.
just gonna say that the politics and how that is going is really harsh
Mm,
these days. So,
Well, it
It's, yeah,
certainly doesn't follow Ephesians 4:29.
no, it doesn't.
And that's the verse that came to mind in thinking of Daniel. Although this Ephesians 4:29 was long after his time, it speaks to us. He was a good example of that.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you want to share what Ephesians 4:29 is in case?
Mhm. It says, "Let no unwholesome talk proceed out of your mouth." I'm so used to the NIV, but I'm just going to read
That's
it.
okay. That's okay.
Mhm.
You can just summarize it.
Yeah, it says, "Let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth except that which is edifying and
Mhm.
building up of one another." If we could live like that, or things would be a whole lot better all the way around because it's respectful.
Respect.
Mhm.
So I think we all agree that we are in difficult times right now. And how do we respond? Whichever side you're on, be respectful to the other side.
Mhm.
I've just seen a lot of things on Facebook that are so harsh, coming from people that you would never think would say those things.
Mhm.
The
coming from
name
people
calling.
who think they're Christian, who say they're Christian and
Mhm,
living by these principles. So, yeah,
mhm.
well, that's happened in our family, so it hits close to home. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ours too, and I've called them out on it. Remember, you are a man or a woman of God.
I did
How
that
do you
too, and
respond?
it didn't go well. They disowned me. So,
Well,
but I felt like I was not harsh in doing so. I was like, I'm just not going to follow that rhetoric, I don't think that's fair and doesn't serve any purpose. And
well, it's biblical. It
yeah,
says, we are to go to
it's too bad
someone.
I didn't have this beforehand, and then I could have just used the Bible scripture and not said
Right, right.
from my words and used his words.
Yeah.
I think that's when
Mhm.
I get into trouble is, even though I think I'm being gentle of heart, I'm still not using his words. So if I used his words, it would work better. You can't argue his words,
No,
right?
and the thing is we have to go back to how Daniel responded. With respect, with prudence, with discretion. With discretion. And sometimes discretion is going to just say, don't respond.
Mhm.
Don't respond. Because sometimes you can't change anything, and it's not about changing, it's just about being respectful in our interactions with people. So I think Daniel gives us a really good example, and he was in a dire situation. His life was at stake.
Yeah.
His life was at stake. Our lives are not at stake, but our reputations are, for sure.
Well, our lives
So
are at stake. It altered relationships. It altered our family and how we interact with each other. So it is. I mean, everything we do is either life affirming or not. And I think that's just we have to accept that, no, we're not going to be thrown in the fire, but it does have,
it's a different kind of fire.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know it won't help to be disrespectful. We know that for sure. So kindness has to rule the day, and respect, and respectfully disagree. So Daniel, good example. And Daniel's just a kid. Remember, he's just a kid. This is only the second year of his captivity. And how old was he when he was taken captive?
15.
15.
And
So
you
he's
mentioned
just
a 16-year-old using such wisdom.
right. Right. Okay, so let's move on. Because we know that he went to his friends in 17 and 18, and he gets them to help him pray. And then let's look at what we see about God in 19 through 23. Because when they prayed to God, what was the response?
The mystery was revealed to Daniel, and then
Mhm.
his response to that was he blessed the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And his blessing was just beautiful, you know.
What do you see about God in these verses?
All wisdom and power belong to him. I can get wound up and run my mouth a lot, so I'm going to try to be still.
Okay, okay. What else do we see about God in these things? These verses.
Well, Daniel's acknowledging that he's in charge of the seasons of all the nature, and also in charge of kings and kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
So the politics, basically.
Right, right. So, yeah, so this is what we're talking about, kings and kingdoms here.
He also,
Anything else that you saw?
yeah, he also gives wisdom and understanding.
Mhm. So if we need wisdom and understanding, where are we going to go?
To God.
Yeah, Sunday school question, right? But yes, but he gives it. He gives wisdom and understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things, and that's what Daniel was looking for. This is an impossible question the king is asking, but God is not impossible. He can answer this. So he's where we need to go for wisdom and understanding. God answered Daniel's request. Okay, so he has the answer. He has the answer from God. The king wants to know what is the dream and what does it mean? And Daniel has asked God and has received that response. So now he's going to go to the king. We're looking at verses 24 to 30. 24 to 30. What happens when Daniel goes in with the answer and says, "Let me see the king"? What happens? And what's the conversation there?
Well, instead of Daniel saying, yeah, I've got the answer for you, right away, he says, God revealed this to me to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
To make that very clear that Daniel is not the one who interprets the dream, it's God.
What could he have done? Being a 16-year-old kid, what might his response have been in this situation when nobody could give an answer?
He could have
Maybe,
taken credit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would get a lot more respect from the king probably if he just said, I can do this.
Yeah.
None of them can, but I can.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting that Arioch, in verse 25, what did Arioch say when he brought Daniel into the king?
I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can make the interpretation known to the
Right.
king. Mm-hmm.
But Arioch was saying, I found a man.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking credit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't find him. Daniel came to Arioch and said, I've got this, take me to the king. But Arioch before the king is like, oh, I found a guy. So So it's
Mhm.
all, Ariak's taking credit, but Daniel is taking no credit whatsoever. What else do you see in those verses?
Daniel also said that the God in heaven revealed the mystery not to Daniel, but to King Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't even
Mhm.
take credit there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at what the dream is. Verse 30 says, "But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me not because of any wisdom that I have, not because of any wisdom that I have, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king." Okay, so let's talk about the dream. In 31 to 35, here's the dream. What is the dream about?
The statue.
It's the statue. So do you have your statue paper in front of you?
Mhm.
Colored or not colored? Yeah. Yeah. So what does Daniel tell him about this dream? Basically, can you just sum up what the dream is according to this statue?
Well, it's a big statue with a head of gold.
Mhm.
You want me to say what represents?
You can if you'd like, or we can,
It
yeah, go
represents
ahead.
King Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay.
And the next section down will represents another kingdom inferior to him, and that's made of silver. It's like the arms and chest.
Mhm.
Then the next section down is gonna be the third kingdom made of bronze, which I assume is that thing. And then his legs are the fourth kingdom made of iron. And the feet are clay and iron, which represent the divided kingdom. They're mixed together, but they don't hold
Mhm.
together.
Right. Right. So the statue represents 4 kingdoms,
Yeah.
right? That will come. He said, I'm going to tell you, you saw, I'm trying to find the verse that talks about what is to come. Eh,
Well, verse 29 says, make known to you what is to be.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is all future. This is all future, except for the head of gold. So that's the dream. That's the statue. That was the hard part that the other magicians could not come up with, like what the dream is, but God revealed that to him. So now let's look at the next few verses, 36 to 45, the interpretation. So who does the head of gold represent?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. 36. Let me find the right spot on my. Okay, yes. This is the dream and its interpretation. You, O king, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom. Wait, who gave him his kingdom?
God,
God of heaven.
God.
the God of heaven.
Isn't that what we saw earlier too? That God is the one who gives. He installs kings and removes kings. This is about kingdom. So right now, Daniel's acknowledging you are the head of gold.
Mhm.
And he describes that you have the king, the power and the might and the glory, all of that is yours. And into whose hand he has given wherever they dwell, the children of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. You have all this power because God gave that to you. we know a little bit later on, Nebuchadnezzar is gonna get into some problems there. Okay, but what comes next? So the first kingdom is Nebuchadnezzar. What's the next kingdom?
Subsequent kingdom that's not as powerful,
Mhm.
represented by the silver.
Okay, and do we know who that is?
That's the Medo-Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm. And how do we know that?
From our timeline?
Yes, remember that when we studied the overview of the whole book and the writing on the wall?
Mhm.
Remember that? The Babylonian Empire ended that night, and
Mhm.
then Medes and Persians came in after that. Okay, so that's the second kingdom. What's the third kingdom? What do we know about the third kingdom?
It will rule over all the earth.
Okay. So seems like it's going to be stronger than the second kingdom. So what it says about this one is it will rule over all the earth. Doesn't identify who that is just yet. And then the fourth kingdom, what do we know about the fourth kingdom?
It's going
It
to
says it-
defeat the third one.
It break and crush all these.
Mhm. So again, it's a pretty strong kingdom.
I have a question that might be dumb, I don't know, but do these refer to like the Iron Age and the Bronze Age, or is that just completely at a different time? Like that,
I can't answer with authority, but I'm saying I don't think it does.
no.
I think it's just the strength of the metal
Yeah.
we're
okay.
discussing. Yeah.
I don't know. I think if you were to map up the timelines,
Mhm.
you might find there's a high correlation.
Okay,
Oh,
maybe we can look that up.
that's just what it reminded me of, all
Yeah,
the terms.
yeah,
That's really a pretty cool idea.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. So, Mark, do you want to look that up for us eventually? Do you
Sure.
have any, that would be great.
Okay.
That would be great, and we can answer that question. So maybe next week we can come back to that. We're going to be talking about the statue for a while, so it's going to be there. Yeah, but that would be interesting to know. All right. Okay, so we have the fourth kingdom, which is strong. Anything significant about the fourth kingdom?
It goes down the two paths. Because you got the two legs. So it's a divided kingdom. Possibly.
And then what do we see about the feet?
They're unstable. They're clay and iron. They don't stick together. They're divided.
They're divided. And then what about the toes then?
The toes, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. The kingdom.
And look at 42.
Yeah.
42.
Kingdom
Oh,
shall
the toes.
be partly brittle.
Okay. So we have, because we're going to get into this later, but the 10 toes, possibly representing 10 different kings during the time that this happens. So we'll look at that later.
Wow.
But what do we see then? Let's look at okay, 44. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Okay.
That lends credence to what you just said, that those toes may represent kingdoms. Because
Mhm.
44 sounds like it refers to those in the days of those kings.
Right. Of those 10 kings, okay,
Hmm.
that God will bring a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Okay.
Mhm.
So what that looks like, we don't know. Like, be 10 different countries that all joined together as one. But definitely it talks about when God sets up his kingdom, that there would be these kings, these 10 kings. Which takes us to the stone, verse 45.
Mm.
So what do we see about the stone? What does the stone do?
Oh,
It crushes everything it comes in contact with.
Okay.
It destroys the kingdoms.
Okay, let's talk about, say, on page 23 and 24 in your homework. What did you learn about this stone? What might this stone represent?
Christ.
Mm-hmm. And how do we come to that conclusion? What verses are we looking at that would tell us that?
Just 45 and in chapter 2 there, it came from no human interaction, so it must have come from God directly.
Mm-hmm.
And in First Peter tells us that the Lord is a living stone rejected by men. So Christ is referred to a stone in other books here.
Mhm. Well, the stone is a firm foundation, the cornerstone from scripture, but it's also a stone that oppresses and destroys those who are evil and do not believe. That's what I got from my reading.
Right, because it talks about, I'm trying to find that. Well, First Peter's, we were built on him, but
Let's see. It's referred to a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. That's First Peter 2:4-8.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's
What did you-
interesting.
Go ahead.
From reading from Isaiah 28:16, behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a tested stone, which to me immediately took me to Jesus. A costly cornerstone for the foundation, firmly placed. He who believes in it will not be disturbed. And I thought about John 3:16. Jesus is the cornerstone.
Right. So when you put all these together, you can see this is Isaiah, it's Peter, it's Daniel,
Psalms.
it's Genesis, all the way through. You can get the picture that this stone, and it says it was not made by human hands, right? So this stone represents Jesus, and because he says he will set up a kingdom that will last forever. Forever. Which kingdom is going to last forever? Not any of these.
That's right.
Right. Not any of these.
Heaven.
But Christ's kingdom, that stone will crush all of them. And he will set up a kingdom that will last forever. That's the stone.
Yeah.
Okay. You all see that correlation of the stone, okay, like by looking at all the cross references. You see a picture of Jesus who's about to come and do that. Any other comments about the statue, about the interpretation, about the stone?
I've
Yeah.
never heard all of this before, so this is really revealing about the truth of the Bible to me, actually,
Absolutely. That's when you put it all together like this, it's just, it has to be true.
Well,
And-
this is one of those books that is not an easy read. You know, you don't just read it and understand it. You may read it for the sake of reading through it if you're going
Mhm.
through the Bible, but oh my goodness, when you pick it apart and you pray for the Holy Spirit to reveal, your mind is just so full of what he brings to us. I
Mhm.
thought, oh my. Oh my.
Yeah, oh my is right. And because I love that it's the historical part of it where they say that in the second year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. So you can tie that to history, actual history, and know that this guy reigned then and this is when this all happened. And so then when you move forward, you know, you put all the pieces together, Daniel and Revelation line up. They
Mm.
line up. Okay. So it's when you start to see it all come together that just blows your mind.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah. So yeah, to just read something, it's good, but when you take it apart and look at it and cross-reference, then it all makes so much more sense.
Mhm.
So let's look at how this chapter finishes then with after Daniel told the king what he wanted to know about the dream and about the interpretation. In 46, the rest of the chapter 49, what's the result?
Nebuchadnezzar claims that Daniel's king must be God of gods and Lord of kings and revealer of mysteries.
Poor thing, if he could just keep that in his head and let it sink to his heart, it'd be a good thing.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because interesting what, you know, Mark, what you were saying is like he says, Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and paid homage to Daniel and commanded that an offering of incense be offered up to him. The king answered to Daniel, truly your God is God of gods,
Mhm.
God of gods. Okay?
Yeah. He doesn't get it.
It doesn't,
He's the only God.
right. And that was how they were in those days, right? There was many, many gods,
Mhm.
but obviously Daniel's God was more powerful than the other ones, but the other ones were still there. Okay.
I thought it was interesting too that the king's reaction was he fell on his face and he paid homage to Daniel, gave him offerings that showed more where his appreciation was or his thinking that Daniel did this. You know, even though Daniel had said, no, it's not me, it's God. It's like
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar still didn't really quite get it.
Mm-mm.
But I think he's just happy he could sleep again, you know? So Daniel, yeah, so Daniel's place, what happened to Daniel and his place in the kingdom?
He got a promotion.
Got promotion. I don't know if he got a pay increase, but he definitely got a promotion and
Yes.
he was more respected.
Put in charge of all the other wise men, sorcerers, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, is he the guy you would pick to be in charge of all of them? If
Yeah.
he's the only one, yeah, he's the only one that could answer the
Reduce
question.
Payroll, and get rid of all of them.
Mhm.
They didn't do
Yeah,
anything.
right, right. And then what else do you see about what happened there at the end of the chapter?
He raises up his prayerful guys with him.
Right. He brings his team along with him. Yeah. So now Daniel so Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego are appointed as leaders in the province, but Daniel is over all of them. But he doesn't forget his friends. He asks that they would also be risen in the stature. It's like they were all about to die. Just a few verses ago, they were about to die.
This is just a a thought that came to mind. Do you think when you look at the statue and you see the head of gold, and that's Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, but do you think that's partly because of Daniel and the influence he has as God's man, that the statue has a gold head? Because it's present day, correct?
Yeah, it's in that time, yes, it's
Yeah.
present day. Yeah, he's the king at the time.
Right.
And Daniel says, this is you, you are the head of gold. But Daniel also said, God put you there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which Nebuchadnezzar doesn't understand yet.
Mhm.
But yeah. So what do we learn from this chapter? What do we learn about Daniel? What do we learn about God? What do we take away?
When the going gets tough, turn to God.
That's a good summary.
Mhm.
And again, Daniel shows himself standing firm in
Mhm.
what he believes, in the
Mhm.
God that he believes in.
Mhm.
And God honors those
Yep.
that
Right.
that stand firm for him. It wasn't just an allegiance. It was an allegiance, but it was a full commitment. There was no wavering.
Right.
No wavering.
And it's
in him.
and it started with just the food,
Mhm.
right? When he came to this foreign country, he's captive, and it starts with, I can't eat that food. I will defile myself because of my laws. So he was raised to obey those laws. So that foundation, you know, is critical. What do we teach our kids? You know, what's gonna help them to stand firm when things are hard? What's gonna help us in these next 3 weeks?
It's our full dependence upon God. That's it. You know. And even in this crazy election, we're supposed to vote, but God is in control.
Mhm.
He knows the beginning from the end. So however it turns out, he's sovereign.
Right. He
It's scary
is.
though.
It's scary, but what is our attitude going to be? What are the words that we're going to take away from Daniel's example?
Respectful.
Respectful. Respectful,
And pray for our leaders regardless.
regardless.
Mhm.
Right. Right. So no matter what, just be respectful, be
Mhm.
discerning. Sometimes you just don't say anything. But be kind, be respectful.
Yeah.
And we'll let God do his thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's the one who knows. He's the one who gives wisdom. He's the one who can reveal the dark things we don't know. He's the one who puts people in places and still is in control. He's still in control of Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
He still
Someone
is.
told
So
me once, it may not be the person we think is the best person, the good person, but they're there for God's work in whatever way that is. So
That's right.
just
mhm. Yeah.
accept God's direction. What he's making it happen.
Right. And then, okay, then it's gonna all be decided, and then how are we gonna live in that? Okay, if you won or lost, how are we gonna live in that?
Mhm.
The same respect,
Mhm.
kindness.
Mhm.
So,
We live with the spirit of the Lord in us, not
mhm,
the spirit of our own flesh,
mhm.
which is so easily can overtake us if we don't keep our eyes upon the Lord.
Well, that's right, and that's right. And see, going back to where did Daniel go when he heard the news he was about to be killed? Where did he go?
To the Lord.
To
To
God.
the Lord, not to himself, not to his friends, and moaning and groaning and complaining about all of this
Right.
impossible situation, he went to the Lord. And he got the answer. And he did it with respect.
Mhm.
He did it with prudence. He did it with discernment.
I keep saying we don't worship a man, and I don't mean just, you know, one candidate or the other as man, but we worship God. So if you're putting this candidate above your godly principles or
Mm.
teachings, I don't think you're really getting the point here. And I think you guys have said it all well, and this addresses it so well. I wish I had come to this sooner. You know,
Well, yeah. Yeah.
I'm-
And now you have it. Now you have it. And you can take this going forward
Mhm.
because things are not going to get easier just because the election is over.
Oh, no.
So just keep remembering, when things are tough, go to God.
Always.
And then you have to live that out. Okay. You have to live it out. And that's Daniel, consistently living it out.
Mhm. What did you give this chapter? What was the theme that you gave to this chapter? This is the hard part for me because there's just so much I want to write.
No, and I get that. And people are different. So I'm a minimalist. So I just, let me see. I just put Nebuchadnezzar's dream / statue.
Mhm.
Because all it does for me is tell me what is in that chapter.
Mhm.
Okay. We don't have to summarize the whole chapter. It's just when I'm looking at chapter 2, what's the main thing? It's the dream of the statue. Okay. So I just keep it simple because all it is just going to kind of give you, when you're all done, give an outline of, okay, we know what happened in chapter 1. What happened in chapter 1? What was the main thing?
Daniel not defiling himself with food.
Okay.
Standing
So,
firm.
right. And then chapter 2 is the statue and him interpreting the dream. So anything about that, but you don't need to rewrite the chapter. All you need to do is take the main theme from it so that when you look at the whole picture, you're going to know, like, say, for instance, was it chapter 6 that was the handwriting on the wall? I
No,
don't have that in front of me.
Six
that 5?
was the lion's den.
Oh yeah, 5 was the handwriting on the wall. So, and 6 is the lion's den. So you see what you can just follow through and understand quickly what those chapters are about. And then you have the whole story.
Yeah.
So don't overwork yourself. Go ahead, Betty.
Just one additional thing that I've recently more tried to do besides, I put down like what you said, to kind of summarize or know the subject matter, but I also then try to add a statement about what is it saying about God. So like
That's good.
chapter 2, I also put like
Mhm,
God is the God of history. So
mhm.
as a summation about what
Right.
that's.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good because in every chapter you're going to see something about him. So you're creating a character study of God in this as we move through the character study of Daniel.
you
Yes.
guys are
So you can
good. I love it.
Mm. And this is why we do this class, because we learn from each other. We're just wrestling scripture. Everybody's looking at the same passage, but then we come and talk about it with each other and share, what God has shown us. And then we gain a lot of insight from each other. So that's the value of this.
And it's wonderful for me.
It's wonderful for me too.
Me too.
Okay. It's pretty wonderful for all of us. Yeah. So we're all helping each other. We're all helping each other to learn. And Becca, I'm really glad that you're getting a lot out of it. Okay. All right. So next week we'll be on lesson 5, chapter 3. And so in the meantime, you're just going to go be kind be respectful. Okay, that's the challenge. And I'm not telling you to eat vegetables or not eat vegetables. Just go be kind. All right?
Thank you.
Remember Daniel. Remember Daniel these next few weeks. All right?
Bless you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.